Parents seem permanent. They're like continents. They have been there forever, and they're going to be there forever. Maybe a little bit softer with the erosion of the wind, but always there. And when they die, it seems inconceivable. And I've always lived with death and disappearance. You vanish, and it's as though you were never there. When you leave the room, you're gone.
I've asked you repeatedly to consider our family affairs confidential. I heard someone, too. It was you, Ulrich.
It wasn't. I was over there near Mr. Morton.
You went for that knife.
I didn't, I tell you. I didn't.
You lie.
I didn't. Please.
When you think of Americans in the 1950s, my dad is the person you think of.
What?
Must request no one enter except police at present.
Yes, but you can't stop me.
He was this tall, handsome guy who just got stuff done. He had such an extraordinary life. A nightclub singer, a film actor, a theater actor, in the war. He met my mum in Morocco during the torch landings when they liberated Morocco from the 2 or 3 Nazis who were sitting around smoking hash. He never asked my mum to marry her. They were at a garden party at the US Embassy in Paris in the early 50s. He introduced her as his fiancée. And that was his way of saying, "You're marrying me." He didn't ask, he just said, "This is my fiancée," and she was like, "Oh, I guess we're getting engaged then." The thing I remember throughout my whole life was my father telling me how lucky he was to have been married to my mum and to have found her. And then just this feeling of they were kind of in it together. When I was a kid, my dad would be in his study and he'd be drawing or painting, whatever it is, listening to opera. And then he'd come into the kitchen, he'd just sort of whisker around the kitchen a couple of times and go back in and start singing and painting again. It seemed to me that it was very beautiful and really respectful. My mom was always so open and curious. She was just sort of interested in stuff. She was so OCD, it's kind of insane. Everything is labeled, everything is arranged. There were boxes with broken rubber bands in them to be used for some unknown purpose at some later date. Like, who stores that? And they would say, you know, broken elastic bands. You know what I mean? I mean, it was incredible. She was an international lawyer. She worked for Amnesty for a while. But I have a feeling that after my sister died, I think she pretty much focused on me. The last memory I have of that period is the police coming to the door and telling me and talking to my parents. I don't have any recollection for the next 2 or 3 years after that. She was staying the night at a friend's house and there was a fire and she died of smoke inhalation. She was 9. And I've always lived with the things that she left. Her books and her toys and the memory of her, the shadow of her. I'm amazed that my parents managed to keep going on together and the strength that it took. And for me, I guess my life just radically changed. The thing I found as a kid growing up that was unbearable was that all the attention was on me. When I sat down at the dinner table, everything was about me. What was I doing? How was I doing? Who were my friends? I think they just felt the need to be so involved because all of a sudden there was just one of us. My parents wanted to make my life as filled with beauty as possible, to shield me from all the ugliness and the imperfection. And that desire to sort of make everything perfect for me made me crazy. I resented interference. I always just did stuff, like I got thrown out of school. All my report cards say exactly the same thing. Philip insists on playing the court jester. My math teacher wrote, "I see Philip squinting at me from the back of the class and I fear he will sink without a trace." I just wanted to be my own person. I think about the memory that my mother must have had as me as a baby and the way I must have looked at her with joy. And then to have that memory in her mind when I was 17 and just being a mean, ungrateful, selfish kid. That memory must fill you with sadness in some ways. I was so happy that my mom was there to see me get married to Carla. I was so single for so many years, my parents kind of despaired that I would ever get married. I was feeling really happy that day. I got a call from my dad. "Your mum is asleep and she won't wake up." I remember thinking that something was terribly wrong. I just ran, I just raced, driving up the FDR. And I get to my dad's place. My dad's freaking out. My mom is unconscious on her bed. She's had a huge aneurysm. We go to the hospital. They tell me to take off my mom's ring. Her fingers are going to swell up and they're going to have to cut it off her. So I take it off and I put it in my pocket, and it's the ring I'm wearing now. She's in a coma for 3 days. I'm there pretty much every day. The doctor said, "There's nothing more we can do and you're going to have to turn off the machines." And then I switched off the machines, and that was it. I brought my dad to see her. And he was terrified. He didn't know what was happening. I guess this was the first inclination of the state of my father's mind We were walking back from seeing my mum, and he was so distraught and so confused. And these two little girls, maybe 4 or 5, came out of a room, like barreling out of some room laughing, and he just switched off. He was laughing and full of joy at these kids, and it was like what he'd just seen was just gone. And I thought, wow, that's surprising. I think my mum died because the stress of taking care of my father was enormous, was unbearable for her. Her brain literally exploded under the pressure of taking care of a man who was 96, who had dementia, who was subject to being really angry and unreasonable. And that was too much for a woman who was 79. And if I had known all that stuff, I just didn't see it. When I would go and have dinner with my parents, I'd have to repeat myself, or my dad would forget stuff, and I'd just be irritated. I'd just go, you know what, it's so annoying. Why'd I have to repeat myself? I didn't see it. And I wish I had seen it. When my mum died, I found myself with a 96-year-old man in my care. I was in charge of his life, and I had to make it okay for him.
Philip, that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
You know what this is, Daddy? You know what this is? It's a video camera. So you can ask me questions, and I'll ask you questions.
Shut it up.
All right. When I opened the door, I'd know immediately what kind of mood he was in. He'd be just sitting there like this, you know, his green shit just scowling, glowering. I'd sit down and go, you know what I did yesterday? What did you do? I just shot some photographs for the New York Times. No, that's amazing. My son is a genius. I gotta get 20 copies so I can show my friends. I'd make it up sometimes. I'd say, oh, I just shot a big ad campaign. How much do you think I was paid? And he'd go, $50. I go, well, it's a bit more than that. And he'd go, $1,000. And that was like that was an insane amount of money for my dad. And I go, $200,000. He'd go, no, that's ridiculous. Like, it was just inconceivable. I don't remember him being funny when I was a kid. But when my mom died, he was released in some way and became the person he might have been when he was younger. He found fat people hilarious. He'd see a fat person in the park and he'd go like this, and he would always say it in a super loud whisper that he thought no one could hear, but everyone could hear. He'd always go, Philip, Philip, and he'd go like this, which was his signal for fat people. He'd go like that. And then I put the meringues on his sweater, and he was like, look, I have titties. And then about a minute later, I go, okay, take him off. He didn't want to do it himself, so I felt like he'd sort of catch himself because he'd sort of want to be dad again. Every 5 minutes or every half hour, depended what kind of mood he was in, he'd ask me, where's your mother? And I said, well, remember I took you to the funeral and we went to the hospital, and he just looked at me aghast and said, what are you talking about? When did this happen? I mean, just his face just folded into itself with horror. And then I'd say, Dad, you were there. We saw this together. And then he would just, go quiet, and a few minutes would pass, and he'd go, "Where's your mother?" Every 5 minutes this was happening, and it was insane. It was new every time he suddenly discovered his wife was dead. I just got so mad at him for not remembering, because it was so painful for me, and I got to this point where I thought, I can't live like this, and I can't put my dad through this all the time. So I just decided to make up some story about where my mom was, and I decided, well, okay, she's got a brother in Paris that my dad knows about. I'll just say that's where she's gone, and I'll take care of it. And it became a game after a while. I'd say she's running an incredibly successful flea circus, very famous. And then I'd act out the flea circus. I'd do the trapeze act, I'd do the lion. I mean, it wasn't even a flea circus, I was doing like a regular circus, but it didn't really matter. Or he'd say, "What's she doing there? She have another boyfriend?" And I go, "No, Dad, she just loves you." And it made it okay. It was harder for me in some ways to live with the lie. He'd say, "Your mom is such a wonderful person, and I'm so lucky." And I'd say, "You know what? She's amazing, and and I can't wait till she gets back from Paris. And it's so hard to talk about your mother like she's alive when she's not." And I would go into the bathroom, and I'd just start sobbing. I was trying to make a perfect world for him, much the way they did for me. I became his father in a way. I became the protector. My job as his son was to make whatever time he had left as full of joy and as full of beauty as possible. And so whatever that took. It's a burden you have to assume, and it's a weight you have to carry, but it's so worth it. Sometimes we'd sit there and we'd have naps together, both in our respective green chairs, and that also was lovely. And then sometimes we'd read the paper together. Those were really specific moments when it was like my mum had just nipped out to the shops and I was just having a chat with my dad, and it was all fine. There's a film he was in called Charlie Chan's Secret, and he plays the murderer. I found a copy of that on DVD, and we watched it together. He hadn't seen it since the 30s. To see him alive and handsome and vigorous,
Shall we go into the other room?
his voice clear,
Perhaps Mr. Chan would rather wait here. He may not be interested in a seance.
I am sure he will be.
and his movements strong.
I know this place, inside and out. It's a regular honeycomb of passages that start everywhere and end nowhere.
The idea of me and my mother and my sister, and all just unknown before him. All these things that I'd never sort of connected to my father.
Shall we go?
You kind of have a sense of where things started and where you are now. When my mom died, he just aged exponentially. He looked in the mirror and he was totally horrified. For the last year or so, he used to frequently talk about the idea of wanting to die. He just knew what the situation was and he'd had enough. I get really upset. But at the same time, I totally understood. I also wanted them to die. It was really odd having that feeling in my mind, in my heart. And part of me used to think about the idea of killing him. Like just putting a pillow over his head and just And it was such a crazy thing to think about, because I loved him so much and I didn't want him to go. But on the other hand, I knew he didn't want to be here. I knew he just had nothing. There was nothing for him anymore. I mean, my mum was his whole life, and he lived in this twilight world of no time or season or month. If he'd been able to press a button and shuffle off without pain, I would have given it to him. But at the same time, I wouldn't have wanted him to go. Because he's my dad. He's the only person in the entire world that I had left. I mean, I have my family, but it's not the same as my family. The beginning and the end of everything just started with these crazy kind of panicked journeys. I remember just running to the airport, running to the plane. I get there and he's not really saying anything. He was always the person who was so alive, he was so vibrant. Everything was interesting. And then to see him so still was so strange. I just spent the whole night with him, holding his hand. And then he just, just died in the morning. He just stopped breathing. I always sort of saw myself as this little spinning asteroid drifting through space, not with any particular goal in mind, just sort of doing the things I'm trying to do. And every now and then, I'm pulled in by the orbit of a much larger body. But I was pretty pleased about Carla being pregnant. Mostly because it seemed to say that I had fully functioning balls. Well, no, I was pleased that there was a kid. And I was actually very pleased that it was a girl, too. As they pull Loulou out, the sun is coming up into the room and it's just flooding the whole room. My first words are, holy shit, she's enormous, because they pull her out like a prize haddock or something by her feet, and she is just giant. I just felt like, well, this is weird. I have a kid. It was like trying to have a love affair with an amoeba. There's a lot of shit, there's a lot of crying, and the screaming was just apocalyptic. It was like dealing with unexploded ordnance. You just, you put it down really delicately, and all of a sudden, the air raid siren just cranks up, and you're like, shit, what did I do? You know, and you're trying to diffuse it, green wire, red wire, which one do I cut? And you're freaking out, and is it milk? Is it the nappy? Is she shat herself? I mean, you're trying to figure out all these things, and it's none of those things, you're all of them, or one of them, or you don't know any of that stuff. I was really surprised by how much I thought about my parents when Loulou was born. My dad was always so healthy and fit. He never seemed like an old man. And I wonder how I'll be, if I'll be as limber or as youthful as he seemed to be in my mind when I was a kid. When I think about my mother, and I think about everything she told me, I realize that she was right about pretty much everything. And I also think about having this image in my mind of Loulou as this beautiful, lovely, sweet baby. And when she's an enraged teen and nothing I do is cool and everything I do is stupid. I take great joy in the idea that there's part of my mum or part of my father that's continuing in her. Maybe that's my mum's hair because it's a little bit curly or that kind of thing. My father, when he'd eat apples, he'd always take the sticker off the apple and he'd put it on his hand. So I started doing it. And then Loulou saw me doing it, now she does it. It's such a small thing, but it's this peculiar transmission of a Toledano idiosyncrasy through generations. And I love seeing that. I don't know how you start talking to your child about people who aren't there anymore. I think it just comes out in stories, right? She'll do something, or she'll remind me of something, or I'll be reminded of something. And then I'll say, oh yeah, you know, your grandmother, my mother used to do this or that, or... I hope she's curious. I'm so clearly conscious of everything that they gave me now. Now that they're gone, their shadow remains. I see what a strong and lengthy shadow that is. And how that colors and changes my whole life. So you see yourself clearly when your parents die. You're silhouetted on the hilltop, whatever that means. You know, it's clear.